Hey everyone, welcome. It's Baron, and this is going to be not so much a build guide per se as a build showcase of the Spark Inquisitor build that I've been running. It's got a lot in common with many of the top Spark Inquisitor builds on PoE Ninja right now, but there's a couple areas where it differs slightly, just the way I accomplished certain things. I just took slightly different avenues. So let's talk about some of the main features of the build. Big, broad features first. So it's a Spark build, and we are in fact converting Spark. At present, we're converting it almost entirely from lightning to cold damage using two Call of the Brotherhood rings. That's a major focus of the build right now. Now, this is a build that benefits a lot from the Nimbus ring, and that is an upgrade that I've got coming on the horizon, hopefully soon. And so you lose some of the conversion, but you gain the projectiles basically doubling. So it's pretty wild. But with the conversion, why do we run that? Well, this is a major focus of the build, the Nebulous Scepter. We are overcapping both cold and lightning resist using Melding of the Flesh, Aegis Aurora. We get them both up to 90 all res. So this is giving us quite a substantial damage boost, and it's just that the damage boost we get from the cold damage portion will drop down when by half when we switch out of one Call of the Brotherhood for the Nimbus ring. But the lightning damage will remain, so that'll still be very strong. Next feature up is that this build is really kind of a mini aura stacker. You can see the chest implicits are all about aura effect. Purity of Ice effect is helping my cold resistance, my overcapped cold resistance, or my raised cap cold resistance get up to 90. Non-curse aura effect, that includes Purity of Ice, so that helps too, and it includes everything else. And like I said, we use a lot here. Wrath, Zealotry, Petrified Blood, not an aura, but it is something that we have to reserve. Determination, and we're also using, here we go, I moved that one. Purity of Ice, Vitality, that's an important one because we're using Righteous Fire. We want to be able to regen very quickly. And Tempest Shield, again, not an aura, but really, really useful. Between all those reservations, we really didn't have any room for hatred, so we did the common thing, which is to link it up with Divine Blessing, so it turns into a temporary buff, something like 10-11 seconds, which is a little irritating to have to hit all the time, but it really is a big damage boost. And in crowds of trash enemies, the build deals so much damage that you don't need to do it all the time unless you're like deep wave into a simulacrum or against a boss or whatever. Then you want to hit it as often as you can. But yeah, we've got hatred there on standby, not reserving any mana, just costing a quick blip of mana. And the mana cost reduction on this build is sufficient so that when we cast it, it's only costing 38 mana to nothing. It's supposed to cost hundreds. And part of the way we are doing that brings us to the next feature of the build is the Mageblood. So, Mageblood, it's OP. What can I say? This is one of the main reasons that this isn't a build guide. It's more of a build showcase. And Mageblood adds a lot to this build. It adds a lot to most builds, but let's go through. This is not the self-chill version of the build. The self-chill version of the build, which I think, is it Jungruin? One of the creators who's been big recently, it might have been Jungruin, did a self-chill version, and that version is very speedy. You're reversing the effect of chill on yourself, so you run around like crazy. This build doesn't do that, so the Mageblood is a really big deal for improving our movement speed, and it's really hard to overstate not just how good it feels, but it's an important defensive mechanic, and it makes it a really effective Sanctum runner too. So don't underestimate the movement speed. Cast speed is huge for Spark DPS because you've got so many projectiles firing out. They pierce enemies. They can all hit and shotgun enemies. So the more you're getting out, the better. Less fire damage taken. So first off, having this gives a ton of extra fire damage. It's almost 100, or not fire damage, fire resist, almost 100 fire resist just from this flask. And then on top of that, less fire damage taken. That gets subtracted out after everything else, like after the resistances have already been applied. So that really helps us sustain Righteous Fire. Like, look at, I guess we can't cast Vol Righteous Fire, so I'll do a little showcase and show you. We cast Vol Righteous Fire, we go down almost to 0, and then we just pop right back up. Our regen is crazy, and part of the reason for that is because there isn't much Righteous Fire to offset. It's really doing very little damage to us. We can run 60% reduced recovery maps. Our energy shield will drain slowly, although Aegis will top it up, and our life does not drain at all. And that is despite the fact that we've got the top hat here on our Atlas tree, increasing the effective modifier. So those 60% effect reduced auras, it's more like in the 70s or 80s or something. So the things like vitality, virtually non-existent. Same. Oh, I'm getting the two things confused, but both are important. Both reduced aura effect we can do, and reduced recovery, which is what I was thinking of. Reduced recovery, again, it's like in the 70%, and it doesn't matter because we're taking so little fire damage and we've got so much recovery. We can even run those. So next up, Chaos Res. This is really important. We're going low life with Petrified Blood, and we need as much Chaos Res as possible. That's just what it comes down to. There's no mitigating factor here. We're not Chaos Inoculation. So Chaos damage that comes in deals full damage. I'm still working on getting this capped. I think that's going to be part of my next upgrade. The chest here is not the endgame chest. Ideally, you would get the global defenses fractured mod from the breach grasping mail, and then you get the mono reservation on that. Once I've got that end game chess piece, that I want to have the chaos res on it, because right now we're at 50, and so if I can just get like a slightly above average chaos roll on the chess piece, I'll be good to go when combined with the Amethyst Flask. I also have one of my small clusters here, has some Chaos Res on it with increased effect, but it's very expensive to get all of the things that you want on a small cluster. The build is very deck starved, so this small cluster over here focuses on mono reservation efficiency and dexterity. This one is more mono reservation efficiency and the two resistances that we need the most of. Lightning just happened to be the thing that we're very short on in this build, and we needed to get it up if we want to be immune to elemental weakness. And then Chaos Res, obviously very important. And as you can see, we do the normal Mageblood trick of including a suffix for additional elemental resistances. So we're getting like 75 resist just off that suffix, which is great. We get a ton of armor off of this. And then, of course, as I mentioned at the beginning, we get the reduced mana cost of skills. It's not 25%, it's more like 30-something% because of the increased effect. Or no, I'm sorry, it's in the 40s. Come to think of it, and we get some other sources of reduced mana cost somewhere, forget where. But yeah, so let's talk the gloves. These are important. We've got our auras in the chest so that we can support as many things as possible with Enlighten, and then our gloves are where we actually socket our spark. I am not using an alternate quality spark. I like the projectile speed that I get from the normal quality, and the price is obviously more reasonable. But you're really getting the three support gems here: Inspiration, Increased Critical Damage, and Awaken Spell Support. An expensive upgrade, but an important one. You're also getting two supports from the gloves: Faster Proj and Faster Casting. And you're also getting kind of a third extra support there too. So the added Crit Strike multi and the added Crit Strike chance, it's kind of a balancing between the added Crit Strike gem and the added or the Crit Strike chance gem. It kind of splits the difference. You get a little bit of each. So I consider that kind of 1/4 full support gem. So really, despite being in the gloves, it's like a 7 link, and it deals a ton of damage as a result. You can see we also have the crafted plus level of socketed proj gems. The expensive version of these gloves, in addition to having a much better roll on crit strike multi, it goes up to 70. You would also get the Aisling, however you pronounce it, unveiled version of the socketed projectile gems, because then it is 2, not 1. And obviously we are a spell build, and every gem level we get is a big deal. Lots of damage, which is one of the many reasons that we are running Ashes of the Stars. This just gives the build too much not to use it. Just way too much to consider anything else. It was one of my top priority upgrades. Basically, for this build, I farmed up with another build. I farmed up a Mageblood, and then I kept going. I kept going and farmed up even more currency after that, enough to get this guy started so that when he started, he would already have the Mageblood. So other than the Mageblood, this was one of the most important upgrades right off the bat. Huge amount of reservation efficiency, which, note, it doesn't say mana reservation efficiency, which means it includes life reservation efficiency as well, which is really big because we are reserving 2 things against our life. I forget exactly which 2. In here? Here. We're reserving Vitality and Purity of Ice. That's the one against our life. Now, what we don't have going for us is, even with the improved reservation efficiency, we are below half life with Petrified Blood. Ideally, you want to reserve it in such a way that you have just above like half life. You have like 51% life, so that you get the effects of overleech, so that as you're leeching damage and you take damage, you just continually keep getting topped up. We are below 50%, so we don't get the effects of overleech. In fact, I don't believe I have any direct leech in this build at all, because, again, the recovery, the regeneration is absurd. We really just have to step out of the damage for a half second, and we're back to full. With that said, look at that life pool. I mean, even with Petrified Blood, a life pool of 1,000 is weak. I mean, that's tough. So obviously I would want that to be higher if I could get it higher, and the shield even more importantly. So once we get Chaos Res maxed out, the life isn't super important. Between the Chaos Resistance and the Petrified Blood, 1,000 life should be fair for chaos damage, but the energy shield, we really want more of that, and that's why one of our prime upgrades, in addition to the Nimbus Ring, is changing this to the Grasping Mail. Like I said, that's going to be a big deal because energy shield is one of the defenses that it improves. So, I'm trying to think if there's any other major features to mention. Oh yeah, this cute little trick here. This is worth mentioning right here. It was a bit of an expensive upgrade because it involves an Unnatural Instinct, which is like, I think, 11 div at the time that I bought it a week ago. But it's a really cool little interaction. So, first of all, I want to say we owe a great debt of thanks and gratitude to the folks who cracked and published the cracked Timeless Jewel formula, meaning that Path of Building can now search for Timeless Jewels based on your criteria. It can tell you what seeding you want. So, whereas in previous leagues, getting something that works as well as this one might have cost me 50, 100 divine. It cost me a divine. 1, because people just throw all of their Timeless Jewels into a dump tab. They don't know what they're worth. They let the market sort it out. And now that people can search for them, we know what seed numbers to look for to get the exact effects we want. Buyers and sellers are much more able to find one another, which means prices go down. But it's also a good thing for the sellers, because I never would have bought that guy's 1 divine Militant Faith. Never would have crossed my mind. Without knowing what the seeding did, he would have had to go onto like TFT or a forum somewhere and post a screenshot of what the Timeless Jewel did. So I never would have bought that. And he never would have sold it. So he's getting money that he wouldn't have before, and I get it for a better price than I would have before. Win-win in my book. So the increased effect of non-curse auras is the main thing. that we want on this. Ideally, you would get a second function per devotion that is also good, like increased elemental damage, I think is one. That would be crazy. I settled for one because it had everything else that I wanted. It was converted by Dominus, which means that it gets this inner conviction. We get more spell damage per power charge, and we are using power charges. And most importantly, we get this node. This node used to be, like if we take this out, what's normally in that spot? Increased mana regeneration rate, which like, cool, but I'm already bringing my mana cost down to 7. I don't need mana regeneration rate. I'm already out regenning any amount of skills that I cast. So the mana regen was useless. This was just a travel node. Regen 1% life. I'm regenning 1,000,000% life with this build. This I would have rather this been intelligence or strength. But with the Militant Faith Timeless Jewel, it becomes a very powerful +1 minimum frenzy charges. Isn't that cool? Frenzy charges give us cast speed, movement speed, and you may be asking, well, how the hell are you getting 150 devotion? It doesn't look like you've taken that much devotion yet. 5, 10, 20, 30. There's not much. How are we getting? Because it only counts if you're taking the nodes. That's where our good friend Unnatural Instinct comes in. This is a clever little trick that plenty of people do know about this. But in case you haven't seen it before, Unnatural Instinct allocates, or rather, it grants the bonuses of passive points that I have not allocated. So these two here, the attack speed, which I don't need, I don't attack with this build, we don't get those. We do get literally everything else. Spell damage, cast speed, dexterity down here, let's see, some movement speed, and of great import, notice how the devotion is added as a bonus here. Yes, it's true. We get the devotion from each and every one of these unallocated small passes that is within both the green and the blue circles. An overlapping Venn diagram of happiness. We love this little section of happiness because it adds up to a ton, well over 150. I think it's in the 200 range. So we definitely get the +1 minimum frenzy charges, and we get a ton of benefit of the non-curse aura effect. Like we're getting like something like 15 or 20% increased aura effect. Beautiful. We have so many auras in this build that getting increased aura effect is excellent. And then we do have glancing blows. I guess this is just a final thing to mention while we're on the skill tree here. Glancing blows really helps with Aegis Aurora. You know, it's as straightforward as that. You get ES when you block, and so you want to block a lot, and you don't mind that you're taking 60% of the damage, or 65. Holy shit, really increase that. You still don't mind because you're getting, I'm sorry, how much? 2% of your armor when you block. Well, how much armor do we have? Oh wait, it's 43,000 armor. So we get something like 900 ES, or almost our entire pool, every time we block. So if you block, topped up. That's it. That's end of story. If you block, you're topped up on energy shield. So glancing blows is huge, as is, where did we put it now? I always forget. Tempest shield, divergent Tempest shield. The divergent quality adds additional chance to block spell damage, and so with Ashes of the Stars we pump that up to 4 plus the 26 that we get from the gem itself, meaning 30% chance to block spell damage just from Tempest Shield, which doubles up to 60 with glancing blows, meaning that we have to take very little on the tree here. I would consider taking another shield block somewhere, but you can't get it easily. You'd have to get all the way in to this node. Let's just make sure. So at a minimum, you'd have to spend 2 points to get in there. We're not right here, so we'd have to spend a bunch of points to get around this bend. We're not wielding a staff. Yeah, there's no easy 1 point additions that would give us additional spell block, because if there were, it would be capped. If we could just get one little node with 2% spell block on it, that would be it. Game over. 75%. And then we had, but in any case, 72 and 72 for attack and spell. Pretty good. Pretty darn good. So I think that's about it for showing off what the build is about. Typical boots there. Not too much to say about those. So let's do a showcase and show what it actually looks like in maps. Kind of later on in this build's progression, where it is now, one of the last things you do when making it more expensive is... ooh, that was a good hit. That was a very good hit. Right away. One of the first, or rather the last things you do is change up your reservation efficiency, which is expensive. It takes those expensive cluster jewels. And you swap out Herald of Ice, which reserves 35% of your mana, and gives you better, like slightly better clear because it causes those ice explosions. You switch that out and you put in Haste instead, which is a 50% aura, so you can't get it without increasing your mana res efficiency, but it increases your cast speed like crazy, as you can see right here. And as you also probably saw, if you're familiar with the strategy, I am indeed doing the Harvest Infinite Sextant Winged Scarab strategy here. So I'm even comfortable taking the minus cold and lightning resist altars, which are scary even for this build, but it kills fast enough that it doesn't need to be too scary. Ooh, wow. That was a big hit. I'm doing Bestiary right now. I was just finishing up that Bestiary challenge, and also it's an easy thing. The build kills so quickly that like you barely notice that the beasts are there, even though they have crazy high health. And Cragid Chimerals are very, very expensive right now, so that's a fun thing when you can stumble on one of those. They're worth a couple divine, I think. So let's see, where are we going with that? Yeah, just okay. I was willing to take the minus resist because I do plenty of damage, so I can usually kill things, as you see, before they get anywhere near me. Let's just check real quick before we pop in here. With that altar, which is taking off over 50 because of the increased effective altars from the keystone, we have 65 lightning res and 82 cold res. So 82 cold res is still very, very respectable. This 65 lightning res is why it would be nice when we redo our chest. Ideal suffixes are the mana res, the lightning, and the chaos res. If we get those, we'd really be cooking. That would be cooking. So I feel like we do that, and then we finish up the suffixes, and we work on the prefixes, which depends on how much work I feel like doing on them. Whether I want to dump a bunch of divines into locking suffixes and going for a good unveil, or how I want to do that. There are a bunch of very good unveils for this build. None that are like blow you away good, but pretty good. Like very helpful, like percent life and mana, very helpful for the build. For that rare chaos damage or the rare damage that manages to punch through your energy shield for a moment. So that's definitely helpful. Fizz damage taken as fire and lightning, also very helpful. We, under normal circumstances, have 90% all res. So even though the stat sheet is going to tell us we have 90% physical resistance as well from armor, it's not clear to me. I'd have to do the calculation how true that is, because we know that the armor calculation it fails at higher damage levels. So if I were to be hit by a big physical hit like a Shaper Slam or whatever, I'm pretty sure that does fizz damage, or like a Minotaur Slam, whatever, the amount that you reduce is less than 90% in those cases. And look at this. These bosses, by the way, they're taking a second to kill, but that's because I'm using this one. Map bosses have 200% more life. 200% more life! And then what do they got over here? Unique boss has 200%. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's the modifier from the sextant. Never mind. Careful, don't get. But they also have elemental resist, although that does not matter for this build because as an Inquisitor, we are ignoring their elemental resistance. As I am saying that, I am now realizing that that is a rather important element that we did not cover. We talked gear and we talked skill tree to an extent. We did not talk about our passive tree. So I have not been paying attention, and I'm sure the harvest is around here somewhere. And since I've been chattering, I missed it. Must be up here, right? Because the blue vines are up here. So it must be off in the corner. Really? No? Where the hell is it? Sorry about that, guys. I know it's here. I'm 90. There we go. All right. Weird. Safety portal, just because these monsters can get dicey, even for this build. By the time you get to the harvest, you deliberately are taking a bunch of nasty altar mods, things that reduce your resistance, cause the monsters around you to do all kind of fizzes, extra nonsense. So, and then the map mods itself have a ton of crit multi, like things can punch through even these rather prodigious defenses. So safety portal doesn't hurt. I paid to get to level 100. I maybe if I'd been playing more carefully or been willing to wait until after I got my global defenses chest, maybe I could have self-grinded to 100, but I just wasn't feeling it. I wanted the extra skill point. I wanted to stop being stressed every time that I died and felt like that I was throwing away divines. So I just did it. I went and I spent 6 divine and went through a couple of 5 or 6 run 5-way legions, and that was it. I think it was a total of 11 individual runs, and they go in groups of 5 or 6, and then I was done. So I only had to do 2 groups of them, so not too shabby. I know some people don't like that, don't approve of that. Oh, see, there's a big hit right there, dipped into my life total, but look how fast that stuff shoots back up. It's amazing. I gotta spike these guys down. Alright, whatever. There's Vol Righteous Fire. And look how quickly that popped back up. You barely even saw it. It just takes longer to come back up when we've got the Petrified Blood thing going on. Because it's actively degenning against our regen. But keep in mind, even when that weird red stuff comes up over here, that means that we're technically degenning, but our life is still just pouring upwards. So that was the full map. Dunzo. So let's quickly, because I'm a moron and didn't cover this at the outset, let's just quickly talk about the Ascendancy and then we can wrap it up there. Oops, wrong one. Ascendancy, this is a very straightforward Inquisitor spellcaster build. If you've played one before, there are no surprises here for you. We get Consecrated Ground. That Consecrated Ground gives more damage to the enemies around us. Keep in mind, increased damage taken is further along the damage chain than more. So it's very confusing because it's dealing increased damage, 20% increased damage dealt is like the low man on the totem pole. That's only multiplying flat damage. That's it. And then, crit multi goes on top of that, and then more damage goes on top of that. So more damage multiplies increased damage, but then when enemies take increased damage, it's a whole separate stat from whether you deal extra damage. Whatever you're dealing, they're taking 15% increase on top of all of that. So this is bigger than it looks. Then you've got causes life regen to also recover energy shield. Big for us again. We're splitting our pool between life and energy shield. So if we take chaos damage or if we take enough raw damage through our energy shield that it punches through and hits our life, we can recover both. And we feel fine. We don't have to take Zealot's Oath or anything. Effects of Consecrated Ground, you create Linger for 4 seconds. I hated this node when I was running a Righteous Fire Inquisitor, because it meant that I would have to stop every 3 or 4 seconds, or else my Righteous Fire would start degenning me. That happens to a much lesser degree with this build, because Spark, you have to stop and cast anyway, so you don't feel like it's an interruption to your flow. Next up, Big deal here. We're a crit build, no two ways about it, and we want a lot of crit chance, and this gives us a lot of crit chance. Which of the two is lower? Right now, it is strength by a bit, so we're getting 1% per point of strength, which is 312% increased critical strike chance. Pretty good. Makes it much easier to cap that, because keep in mind, 300% increased chance doesn't mean that we crit 100% of the time by default. It is multiplying the base crit chance. The base crit chance, just before you do anything, is what with Spark? It is... does it tell us? I feel like it's supposed to tell me in the tooltip. No, it only tells me how much the gloves are adding. Too bad. Or does it say in the gem? Critical strike chance. So the base critical strike chance for the Spark gem is 6.0. We add to the base with these gloves, which is 3.5. We add to the base with Zealotry. Do we? No, I take that back. We do not. Apparently not. This is only doing the increase. So, you start with 9%, whatever it is, base crit strike chance, and you need to multiply that by basically 10.5 times. You need 1,000% increased critical strike chance to get to your 100% in crit every time. But it's much easier with this node here. We're already getting 312 of those percent right off the bat. So it must be 1,000%. Not if I said 10,000%, that is not what I meant. But I don't think I said that. And then last but definitely not least, very, very important, and the reason that this build can double so easily as a bossing build, Inevitable Judgment. Ignores monster elemental resistance. Nothing else much to say about that. The big bosses have a ton of elemental resistances, and this node says, I do not care. I don't care. Have whatever resistance you want. You lose. So it's been a revelation fighting Lycia or Lycia, whatever you pronounce her name, the Sanctum boss. Doesn't matter. Most of the time she doesn't even get to her red lightning phase, and I'm sure once I substitute in the Nimis, she will definitely not get to her red lightning phase ever. And this node is a big part of that. Come on. I think that finally has got to be it. I do think that I haven't left out too much from there. There's probably some individual choices that we haven't covered here. I guess I'll just mention overall theme of the tree, as you can see, is we're really not taking much on the tree itself. We are doing a lot of traveling to get to different jewel nodes, and we are reserving a lot of our points for cluster jewel shenanigans. Between traveling and cluster jewels, there's not a ton of space left to pick up huge amounts of damage on the tree. We get some crit here and there. We love our mana reservation efficiency. That's another reason we travel all over the world here, so that we can get 3 different reservation efficiency aura effect wheels. Overall, we're not taking a bunch of lightning damage, cold damage on the tree. We rely on our gems and jewels and stuff to do that. And I think that's it. I'll just wrap up by saying it's a hella fun build. You saw it. It is powerful. It is fast. It is tanky. A lot of that is attributable to the Mageblood. So like I said, not really a guide here. I'm just kind of advertising. This has been fun for me. If you're looking for a high investment build that you can just continually, every time you've got, another 20 divine that you want to throw at it, you'll find a way to turn that into even more DPS, even more tankiness. It takes a really long time to top out this build in terms of, investment no longer is giving you much return. I'm still getting big return on investment whenever I make a change and upgrade to the build. So 2 thumbs up. Been having a great time with it. I'm glad I chose it. Would absolutely recommend. So thanks for tuning in. Take it easy.